Welcome back to Walk with TFB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who's eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. Today we have another special show. This season, season five, is going to be for the books for a number of different reasons. Primarily because I had to dig deep in my bag, and get some people told months, if not years ago, that they'd be on the podcast. And this guest is certainly one of those individuals. I've known this individual for several years now. And I was trying to think back to when we met, but we'll talk about that in segment one. But her story is one that's important, one that's needed, one that's essential for all of us to hear, learn from, and support. But without further ado, y'all help me welcome future Dr. Stephanie Tilley to the podcast. What up, though?
Thank you, thank you. It's such a vibe. Thank you for having me, Tim. I actually just got off the phone with one of my good friends, Ashley Brown Greer. You may know her. She's so dope, doing great work as well in international education. And I was telling her that we're about to have like a podcast interview and talk. And I was like, me and Tim been knowing each other for a while. When we first started, honestly, our careers in student affairs. I think it was at the
Correct.
Dundee Leadership Institute. Yeah.
Oh, you did in Ohio State?
Yes, way back when, like NASPA days, and now here we are transitioning into international education. So, and like when I first started, I was unsure of like what pathway I wanted to take, but international ed was at the top of the list. So I'm glad we both made it and doing great things in this field.
Wait, hold on, bro. You were at Ohio State for DLI?
Um, was when was this? 2015,
Yeah,
2016?
15, 16. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So it's been a minute. Like this was when we was young bucks,
Dang.
like young.
No
Now we
lie.
now we team 30, 30 plus.
No lie. Yeah. Wow. Yes, yes. Wow. Wow.
I
That's
know
all
early 20. Yes.
that's you. You're pre-grad school. Well, Stephanie, look, man, like I said, it's been 7 years since I met you. As you said, we both, really came out of the student affairs and international education space, which is could be a podcast episode within itself. But
Yeah.
like I told you before we started, this episode is not about me. It's about you. And I know the listeners who are tuning in want to know and want to learn more about you. So segment one, Stephanie, what's your story?
So, oh my goodness, I feel like this is such a rich and intimate and complex question, but my story is one of spirituality, is one of blessings, is one of community. I come from humble beginnings, very humble beginnings, Louisiana girl, born and raised in New Orleans, but I spent most of my formative years in rural Louisiana, in Watson, Louisiana. I grew up with a strong appreciation for education. My auntie and my uncle raised me. I wasn't raised by my biological parents. And although we came from humble beginnings, they instilled hard work in me. They instilled the power of education. While other students and kids was watching TV, me and my sister was reading. Like early on, we were bookworms. And my aunt made it clear. She's like, "We ain't got no money to put you through college, so you got to go hard." Not many people know this, but both me and my sister, when we relocated to Watson, Louisiana, is very rural, not that racially diverse. Whereas in New Orleans, very racially diverse. I tell people I knew I was poor before I knew I was Black. New Orleans is a majority minority, and for me, my most salient identity when I was in New Orleans was being lower income. However, then we relocated to Watson. That's when I was not that wasn't aware of my Blackness. I was, but when you're in a mecca full of Black and brown, that doesn't stand out as much. Whereas going to Watson, Denham Springs, I went to from being in a class of nothing but Black students, Black learners, to being one or two Black students in a classroom of my white peers. And
Wow.
so for me, that was a cultural adjustment in itself. And then being a gifted, I now identify myself as gifted and talented. I didn't know that was a word at that time. Me and my sister were both high achieving. Like I said, we were instilled with a very strong work ethic. Most people don't know, but B's weren't allowed in our household. Both me and my sister graduated with a 4.0. We were both one of the first Black students there to graduate high school with a 4.0. because we just knew that, like our aunt and uncle made it very clear, like, when you graduate, you have several options. You go to the Army. I was semi-athletic. I wasn't built for the Army, so I was like, that's not gonna work, I could do a little here, this and there, but I was not built personally for it. They were like, you go to the workforce or you
Yep.
could go to school. And I knew school was gonna be my ticket to a better life. I knew my school was gonna be ticket to better opportunities. You know, um, I always had a forward thinking mindset based off my parents, even though they couldn't afford it, like they encouraged us to learn. I started traveling through books before I actually left, my hometown, before I actually left Louisiana, before I actually left the States. Like I started traveling through books, and so I knew education would be my gateway to a better life. So just work very hard, very hard. And higher education, originally I was a business major. I do have a business mindset, but I've always been communal rooted. And higher education really saved my life. My undergraduate degree is in at Loyola New Orleans. Love Loyola. I wanted to return back to my home city for school. And so being there, it just opened my mindset. Like my freshman roommate, who's still one of my good friends, is an international student. She's from St. Croix. So that was like, introduction to diversity, international thinking, international learning.
Mhm.
Like we have great memories, just like us, like how we say different words, right? How we approach life. Like I learned how to, semi-wine. I'm still trying to learn how to wine, like we had great memories. Like that was a cultural experience within itself. So even before I like even started traveling, just being at Loyola, where such a large international population, that you had people from all over the world. You had Black people from all over the world. You had Southern Black folks. You had East Coast Black folks, West Coast Black folks. You had international Black folks. So it's just, like phenomenal. Love Loyola. And that really rooted in me, like how much I love education and how transformative it was. And I was honestly I was honestly at a crossroads. Like although I enjoyed business, my heart fully wasn't in it. Although I saw that there was a need for Black people, Black women in there. I finished the economics, and I was one of few Black women in my economics classes, but my heart fully wasn't in it. And I studied abroad twice when I was an undergrad. I went my first time was semester during my junior year to Costa Rica. Absolutely loved it. Like cry like a baby when I had to go. Like my only regret was I wish I would have did it for a full year. Like I wish, like I was just starting to, feeling comfortable with my Spanish. Like, I was just starting to navigate, like the area. Not even gonna lie, had me a little boo there, like, and it was just amazing, like amazing. And so I just wish I would have honestly stayed a full year. And I'm like, man, now I have to go. Like, if I'm honest with myself, I kind of was in like a mini depression coming back, because like Costa Rica changed me as a person. I'll be honest, like coming from lower income, I've carried shame with me. I've carried a little bit of anger and resentment about my background. Like I've always had to work. I held a job when I was an undergrad. I've had to put myself outside of scholarships, and I was able to get several scholarships to help with my undergraduate journey. I'm a alumni of the Jackie Robinson scholarship. That fellowship foundation has been so helpful. Jackie Robinson changed my life. My first time on a plane was through Jackie Robinson. I've never been on a plane prior to then. And then I'm also a Horatio Alger Louisiana scholar. So those two foundations really helped fund my undergraduate career. And also Loyola, I was able to get scholarships, and whatever I didn't get in, I got, Sally Mae, had to call her up.
Mhm.
We call them the Loyola loans, had to get help through that. But I'm thankful, I'm thankful. And it just opened my eyes. And if it wasn't for those entities, I wouldn't have been able to go to college. And then going, studying abroad as a Benjamin as a Benjamin International Scholar, a Gilman Scholar, Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholar, that I was able to fund my study abroad. And I'm thankful. My only like regret, I said, was wishing I stayed longer. And it opened my eyes and made me realize how privileged I was. Like I said, I carried a lot of shame, a lot of, just kind of anger, frustration with my economic status, but going abroad and seeing how in the United States, just the opportunity to have access to education, to, better your circumstances, to knowledge, seeing how just transformative, how life-changing and profound knowledge is. Whereas in Costa Rica, our type of poverty looked different there, and it was just very humbling. But seeing how rich the people were, how thankful the people were, and hardworking, hardworking. I thought I worked hard. I was like, Steph, you need to sit your butt down. You're crying and whining, like, it was just amazing to see that work ethic, and it touched me. It really touched me. I live with a host family that were so loving. I'm kind of getting a little emotional, but honestly a blessed experience, that I'll never forget. And it just opened my eyes. Like it opened my eyes to so much. I also met Black Costa Ricans there. A lot of them came from Jamaican ancestry, and people thought I was a Black Costa Rican, so they would start talking to me in Spanish. They call it Jamaican. Are you Jamaican? I'm like, oh no, 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 no. I'm still learning the words and the language, but it was a phenomenal experience. Had time, allowed me to travel. I was able to travel to Panama and Nicaragua during that time and fully loved it. Felt right at home. And what also stood out to me was how easygoing the life was. I feel like New Orleans, the South, is like our pace is slower, which I appreciate. I enjoy being present, but that lifestyle in Costa Rica, they say pura vida. Not only it was a slower presence, but I just was moved how present they were. I feel like in the States, we ask, "How are you?" Outside of courtesy, and not necessarily wanting to really know the essence of how someone is. Whereas there, they really listen. They want to know, how are you? Like, are you good? Are you happy? How are you feeling? Like, they truly want to know how you feel, and they lean into it, even if it's not a feeling of positivity. And that really moved me, like just how connected to humanity that we're. Not to say that we aren't, but I feel like the U.S., we can be so fast, we can be so moved, we're so focused on the outcome, productivity, and sometimes we lose our humanity in that. And so came back a whole different person. I was like, Lord, I mean, I still was still, but I'm not into it. It's just different now. I felt different. It's just different. Like, I feel in between worlds. Like, I'm here, but I'm really not here. I want to be there, but I'm not there anymore. And so that really like solidified my interest in international education. I learned that like student affairs was a field. I learned international education was a field. And let me know if I'm talking too much, because I can do that sometimes. And it just led me to like, okay, pivoting from business to student affairs. And from there, I decided to get my master's in student affairs. I was still undecided if I wanted to go fully into international education or just stay broadly in student affairs. So I decided to get a student affairs master's, but still focus on international ed. So or seek it. So I went to Texas State, love Texas State. That's when I packed my bags up from Louisiana and moved right next door. Love Texas. Didn't know too much about Texas. I just knew about them Cowboys. I'm a Saints fan. That's all I really knew. But then I was introduced to HEB. Love HEB. I'm a fan. Like, I'm a huge fan. HEB, it's totally random, but it's a food chain, like kind of like Walmart, but next level. It's an experience when you go to HEB. Learned about kolaches, learned about breakfast tacos. Like, it's a whole culture here in Texas. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling it. Like, I'm vibing it. Had a phenomenal time at Texas State. It's a Hispanic serving institution. although I knew of HSIs, I wasn't familiar with them, and I fully loved it. Had a phenomenal time. During that time, I'm Greek as well, like you, D9 fam, and I had my assistantship in Greek life. I enjoyed it, but my heart was in international education. I didn't study abroad. I didn't study abroad during my graduate studies, but I did participate in a lot of international adjacent related work. Like I did work a service learning trip in refugee education. That was eye-opening, learning about a different aspect of international education, learning about the international student experience, learning about the refugee education experience, learning more about the Chicano movement, the Mexican movement. Like it just opened and expanded my eyes. And I was like, wow, international education is so broad. There's so much depth to it. So I was like, okay, like I really want to be in this field. And then, doors open. Like I avidly applied for jobs. International education. I attended TPE, the placement exchange, during my last spring, in which I graduated, which was May 2017. TPE was in March 2017. It was in San Antonio, so it was literally in my back door. And I'm glad I did, because through that opportunity, I landed my first job, which was with Northeastern University in Boston. They have a program for first semester freshmen who want to study abroad. And I was hired as an assistant site director for their Greece location. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like so excited. Like when I say, oh my God, I was like, we gotta go. We have to go. I had other great opportunities. This one was for 6 months. And I was like, you know what, Steph, like at that time I was going through a breakup, but I'm like, Steph, this is the time. You're young, like take it. And so I took it, and it was phenomenal. Worked in Thessaloniki, Greece for fall 2017. Loved Greek culture, learned about the Greek people. So much of Greek culture is similar to Black American culture, like their focus and their honor for family, so family oriented. They're very expressive people. Some people are like, oh, Greeks are loud. I'm like, oh, I'm right at home. Like, Black Americans, we're very expressive as well, very loving, very honest people. And just learning about their history, learning about their history, their resilience, they're resilient people. I truly enjoyed it. And it also, that job not only was amazing, but it pushed me, it challenged me. I gained a lot of skills. I worked in res life as I was on site with the students. I was over conduct, and we talking about first semester freshmen. They're able to drink in Greece, so of course they wowed it out. I understand. I would have done the same thing too. So that really helped me navigate like conduct. But I loved it. We did a lot of service learning. We did a lot of excursions. So I really learned like program development for study abroad on site, and I was like, ooh. I want to stay. I'm determined. And I was like, I want to apply for other jobs like this. And I had a gap in my career. I came back. That opportunity was very rich in opportunity, but for me, I had bills back here in the States, so I didn't really was able to save as much as I wanted to. I did save some, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna live off savings. After a month or two, savings was almost gone. So I was like, you got to do what you got to do. So I worked as a server until I got my next gig in international education. I was very steadfast. Like I'm very spiritually rooted. I believe in divine intervention. I believe in God, a higher power, and I'm very spiritually led. And God was like, Steph, I got you. This is where you need to be. So I worked as a server until I was able to secure another job. And the next job was in South Africa. And oh my gosh, when I say my heart, like I thought Greece had my heart, Costa Rica, that's why I cannot wait. I have so South Africa is so divine. My next job was in Cape Town, South Africa. And this was more academically rooted. It was with another study abroad company, Lead Abroad, and it was for summer of 2018. So from May to mid-July, so almost 3 months, more so 2.5 months. And so I worked with them, and it was more academically rooted as I worked with a professor to help co-teach 2 classes, and like just lead discussions about South Africa and global leadership, and what is the South African context, what are similarities with the American context. Was based in Cape Town, had connections with the University of Cape Town, loved it. Absolutely love South Africa. I love the job. I didn't really think much about academia, but that was confirmation like, ooh, I really enjoy, like I did teach in Greece, and that opened up the doors, but that job confirmed like I had, that really confirmed that I was like, I'm interested in academia. I would like to, pursue a PhD. And hey, I may even consider the academic route instead of more so the administrator route. And so loved Cape Town. And I'm gonna share, because this is gonna tie into my Fulbright. Um, I learned about Ubuntu, and I'll tell you in the next phase how that touched me. I never heard of Ubuntu. I never knew what that was, but I learned about Ubuntu during that experience, and it means I am because we are. Ubuntu is an indigenous knowledge system derived from South Africa, and it's rooted in community, like it's rooted in love, it's rooted in respect, and I saw that. My favorite part of South Africa was connecting with the Black South Africans. I felt like I was with my cousins. Like I was in my family bag. I made a really good friend there. Me and her became like Thelma and Louise. Like, yes. I dated there, was not expecting to date, had a phenomenal time. I was like, oh, this right here, this right here, this African dating pool. I was like, I think my husband may be here.
Yeah.
Right here. And I was just like, when it was time to go, I bawled. I bawled. And I was at a crossroads because I was 25 going on 26. And I'll be honest, I was having some health concerns. And I was like, I want to stay, but you about to get kicked off your parents' insurance. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, do I choose? Like, I've been choosing the good life. I've been choosing my passion. Do I choose passion or do I choose logic? But it was confirmation to like move back, because during that time I was in South Africa, I was offered my job at Prairie View. Like when I tell you Big Daddy, that's why I call God. Big Daddy was working. Like, so I applied for the job to Prairie View prior to going to South Africa. I applied like 4 or 5 months ago. Didn't hear a thing. I was like, okay, I didn't get the job. So they called me like 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for South Africa. We did the interview. We loved each other. And they were like, we need an immediate hire. And I was like, I'm actually starting a contracted job in South Africa. And her like, oh, we're unsure, but we really want you. We'll think about it. So tell me why. This is like 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, 2, 3 weeks in South Africa. Before I get the call, I went to the slave lodge in Cape Town. This was before my program started. I was like, I want to venture out. Like when I say God brought me to the slave lodge, I was like, do I go to this museum or do I go to this art gallery? I was like, no, I want to go to the slave lodge. I want to know more about South African history beyond what I've read. I want to hear it from the people. And it's their history of apartheid, their history of slavery. Tell me why when I get there, I see students in PV shirts. So during that time, there was a faculty-led program from the College of Business. Dr. Lawrence McNeil, I remember him. I was like, is this Prairie View A&M University? He was like, yes, what you know about PV? I was like, I literally just interviewed for a job for the study abroad program coordinator. He was like, what? We will be working together. I was like, send up good signs. Like, we just had our interview. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Wow.
He was like, right? He was like, here is my business card. Let's stay in touch just in case. And, because of the time difference, this was our afternoon. This was early morning in Prairie View. Later, our night, I got the call from Miss Evie Myers. She was like, Miss Tilley, we want you. We want you. And I was like, Miss Myers. And like, it was so unbelievable, amazing, because we're both women of Christ. We're both spiritual women. I was like, Miss Myers, you won't believe what happened. She was like, oh, you're meant to be here. She was like, she's like, we will wait for you. She was like, we will wait for you. We need immediate help, but we will wait for you. We will wait those 2 months. And I was like, Lord, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where, like, I want to stay longer, but you're telling me to go back. And more than anything, I'm excited, being in South Africa, being around, I was around all South Africans, but just being in community with my Black South Africans, I was excited to return and work in a Black space. You know what I mean? Help other Black students, help HBCU students, learn about the power of study abroad, something that changed my life. Like, I was excited about that opportunity. And when I went, Prairie View has been so amazing for over 4 years. I worked in as a study abroad program coordinator. I loved it. Like, it was so fulfilling. So much of who I am, I saw and I see in my students coming from humble beginnings, excited about the world, unsure what it is, but curious of what it is, leaning into it. Many of them, this is their first time going abroad, first time having a passport. That was me. Like, I literally felt like I was doing my life work, learning about Black internationalization, HBCU internationalization. I felt right at home. When I was in South Africa, I did not know this. I learned about HBIs, historically Black institutions, knowing that HBCUs is an international context. And just coming back and being able to work in that space was phenomenal. It wasn't easy work. We did a lot. We did programming, we did advising, international fellowships. That's when I learned about Fulbright. And I'm like, ooh, I want to do this. And then I was like, okay, I want to get my PhD. I haven't been to a Black space, and I know that I want my research to be rooted in HBCUs and Black internationalization, Black students, the global diaspora experience from an educational setting. So I was like, I want to get my PhD here because I want to learn about Black thought. I want to talk about this without having any perceived limits. I want to learn from other Black educators, and it's been phenomenal to see how rich, how deep our history is. So much is untold, but we have such a phenomenal history. And when I say things was just naturally woven together, I'm like, Lord, you have outdone yourself. It hasn't been an easy road, but I'm beyond thankful. And I just hope that he continues to use me.
So we can really stop the podcast right here. That's a perfect mic drop, like quite honestly, with the introduction by itself. But I think there's so many things you said I have questions about, particularly the Jesuit education, because my Jesuit high school was the first time I went out of the country as well, to Ecuador. But you mentioned humble beginnings. You talk about segment 2, right? You talk about experiencing some shame as it relates to socioeconomic status. You talked about the woman at Prairie View said, you belong here. And then just 2 weeks ago, I'm scrolling and I see this phenomenal graphic that reads a pioneer. Stephanie Tilley makes history as Prairie View A&M's first Fulbright scholar. You said God was showing out, Big Daddy was showing out, but what does that mean to you? Like, try to put in the words even 2 weeks later. I know you had a lot of time to think, people hitting you up, but like, what does that mean to you, being Prairie View's first, and then of course assuming this award and the scholarship?
I'm still soaking it in. Like, I just feel so thankful. Like, I really feel so thankful. I really credit my aunt for just having me deeply rooted in my spirituality. I'm thankful, number one, to God, because he, sometimes there's so much that's unclear, and I've just learned to embrace it and just lean into the uncertainty. And it's hard. It is hard because I'm stubborn, and our humanity can be so weak. I'm like, Lord, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. I have 21 questions, but I'm thankful. Like, more than that, I'm just thankful. Like, this has not been an easy road at all. Even like, just complete honesty, you never stop being low income. Like, I thought going to school that would stop. Oh, it will open doors, which it has. But I realized, Stephanie, to advance my family, that responsibility doesn't stop. It changes. It looks differently in different ways, but it doesn't stop. And I have their encouragement, but sometimes they don't always fully understand the weight of things. So sometimes there's a disconnect, but I appreciate their encouragement nevertheless. And so, I'm still taking things in. I'm taking it and I'm excited. Right now I'm in a season of preparation. I'm in a season of planning. So I feel like I'll be able to rest in the magnitude of what that means until I'm actually there, because this season right now is requiring a season of preparation and to a degree service. I have some personal and familial responsibilities right now that I'm navigating. And as I prepare for my fellowship, I want to help my people. I want to help, like, Fulbright is successful. We all can be Fulbrighters. It just takes time, it takes intentionality, and it more than anything, it takes alignment. And so I'm in a season now where I'm helping interested and potential applicants. I want more Black students, I want more HBCU students to participate in it, because I'm starting to learn the magnitude of Fulbright. Like, I knew it was, I'm like, okay, I knew this is a great program. I hate saying the word, but it's prestigious, but I'm starting to really feel it. And I'm navigating what that means. A part of me is, I'm excited for and I'm thankful for the acknowledgement, but a part of me, like, this is kind of foreign to me in a way, like the where I guess the attention that is bringing. So it's a lot of different things that's going on, but more than anything, I'm just in a spirit of a thankfulness. I'm so excited to return to the country that poured into me. South Africa poured into me in so many different ways. Like, when I was there, I learned about the history of apartheid, and how it's connected and parallel to our history of segregation. The Black South Africans, the colored South Africans, learning how just how resilient they were. They welcomed me. They were like, "Welcome, sister." I felt right at home. I cannot wait to go back to that country. I got unfinished business too. Like I said, I was dating there, had some great times. Your girl isn't a part of the 30 plus crew. So I'm like, Lord, I'm hoping more than just a fellowship. Okay. You said if I ask, I shall receive. So we gonna see what's happening now, you know. And I'm excited to dive into my research. Yes, like, just learn from Black, African, South African scholars, hear their stories from a scholarship perspective. And the research I'll be doing is not connected to my dissertation. It's in the same family, but just of a different strand. I decided when applying for Fulbright, I was told, do your dissertation work. And it makes sense. A lot of student scholars who are in their doctoral programs, honestly, is connected to their dissertation. My dissertation is looking at us HBCU and study abroad, HBCU Black students studying abroad, specifically Black males. And when I was working on, although I love that work, I'm rooted in that work, I want HBCU students to go abroad. When I was working on my application, I was like, no, this is not what I should do. When I look back at my experience, I think of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, it gave me a word to what my whole life, it captures my whole life. So much of who I am is my community, it's people who've invested in me, it's people who've taken a chance in me. They saw something that I didn't always see. They were patient with me, in my stubbornness and my ignorance and my fear. They carried me. And so I was like, I'm gonna focus on Ubuntu and how is Ubuntu present or non-present in South African higher education, and how is it used to uplift South African students, specifically Black learners. And it felt right in my soul to do that. And when I was looking at the research, I saw that there was work surrounding Ubuntu in Black learners. I mean, not Black learners in South Africa, but there was a gap when it came to Black learners and tribal learners. And I was like, you know what, Lord, if it's meant to be, it's gonna be. And so I worked on the application. I didn't do it by myself. I had help, I had support. I was able to find a host, and I'm so thankful for those who have helped me. Like, once again, my application was Ubuntu. Like, it's a community effort. We applied, and I was like, Lord, I'm gonna forget about it. If it's meant to be, it'll be. Went about daily business. I found out in late January that I was a semifinalist. I'm like, okay. Okay, we made it to the next step. And I was like, let me not get excited because I know we got one more round to go. And I'm like, Lord, Big Daddy, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Found out in April, literally right before I just recently participated in a study abroad experience in my doctoral program in Belize. When I tell you the timing, I was like, oh, okay, I'm excited for study abroad. I was like, if I don't get the Fulbright, we'll still have a great time. But if I get it, we celebrating, literally like 2-3 days before I saw the email notification, like, ooh, I'm like, Lord. I called one of my good friends. I met her at Prairie View too. And I was like, sis, I don't know if I'm ready to read it. And I was like, okay, let's read it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got it. Like, it was like, I was like, I ain't gonna lie, I teared up. I called my friend Ashley. Me and Ashley are virtual besties. We became really good friends during COVID. So we haven't met in person. We've had like a virtual relationship. And I was like, girl, she helped me with my application. I was like, girl, I was messaging her and she's in South Africa now. She was in South Africa then too. And it was like early, like 1 a.m. her time, 6 p.m. my time, something like that. I was like, girl, guess what? I was like, I'm gonna be coming to South Africa. Like I was just so elated. And I was just like, is this really happening? And then went to my study abroad program Belize with one of my favorite professors. We had during our welcome dinner, we celebrated. Everyone was like, congratulations. And here we are now preparing for this season. This is literally an answered prayer. There's so many moving parts and pieces, but you got to put the work in. And I'm looking forward to what I'm really looking forward to is being on that plane and just heading there and just like resting in that, like resting in the reality of that and just talking to God and just thanking him. Like, I do a lot of thinking when I'm traveling. So right now I'm in a season of movement, but I'm looking forward to that and I'm so thankful.
That's big love, yeah. I remember when I saw that, when I was like, I was introduced to Fulbright probably 2 years ago, and I'm like, this is dope. Definitely want to do it. So I thought, then we'll talk more about that later. But when you received it, I was like, it's somebody I know
Yes.
and have known for a minute. And so I want to say first and foremost, like your acceptance notification is definitely one dope. I've been too reflective of everything. I mean, really your story up to this point. So I think I'm very excited to see what you produce and what you learn and what man you find out of this. You know,
He gonna find me. Correction, Tim. He gonna find me. I'ma just step out.
what man finds you when you step out the house, yo.
Yeah.
I'm
Mbaka
very
gonna spot your girl. I'm telling you, he gonna spot your girl.
But before we go to segment three, we'd love to learn more about, again, you mentioned the attention that's come with it, and I'm sure it'll continue, especially over the next year, really eternity, again, being the first. But you mentioned, right, wanting to help more HBCU black males, but really HBCU students study abroad. And so, including Fulbright, including Belize and South Africa and Greece, like what is study abroad, what is international education meant to you personally? But then a follow-up to that, right? Because you mentioned you started in student affairs. Why do more student affairs programs and curriculum need to consider and really center international education in their work?
Oh my, I love these questions. International education to me, it means growth, growth in every way, growing as a person, to be exposed to another culture. You don't have to leave the US, number one, to do that. The US, we're a melting pot in ourselves, like you could just hear, like, New York got its own accent and flavor. Then we got DC, like, then we have the South. Like I'm a proud Southern. Then we got the West Coast. That's a
Mhm.
cultural exchange within itself. And so that right there, that exposure, it gives you growth. And then, but to go outside your borders, go outside the American context, because the American narrative can be so, I feel like it can be so dominant. you know yes, the US is a leader in many ways, but in many ways we have so much to learn. And I just wish we had more humility in that, to be honest. So when I think of international education, I think of growth, I think of community. It's amazing to come from different cultural contexts, but share similar values, like values of family, values of community, values of learning, to be appreciative of our own culture, values of food. When you break bread, that's like food brings people together in so many different ways, and especially for minority cultures in the US and outside of the US, food is much more than food. It's healing, it's celebration. So, I think when I think international education, I think growth and exposure, and there's so much power in exposure, to not know what you not know, to build upon what you do know, and just realize that each person has something to contribute. We all bring a rich experience. And also, international education taught me that we all have privilege. I know in the United States, due to our history of segregation and racial division, so much of our lens is rooted in race, which is real. Race is still prevalent in the US. Like it's a huge factor in how we experience life. But for me to see that I was privileged beyond the US, that was eye-opening. I was like, what? I have American privilege? I didn't know what that was. I was like, little old me? That was humbling. Recognizing that we have privilege in different ways humbles you. It puts things into context. I love learning, and I'm constantly learning about myself, constantly learning like how I can advance policies, but also learning like how maybe I have indirectly and unconsciously, contributed to something that may not have been as progressive, right? So it's always kept me in a state of reflection, which I appreciate. And I just feel like international education is needed. Research shows it's a high impact practice that study abroad, a global engagement is a very transformative form of involvement, and it definitely needs to be connected into student affairs programs. Student affairs, where focus is rooted in holistic development, and we have to include international education, whether it's on the local level or the global level. Like I said, in the US, we have so much diversity, like how can we expose our students to other cultural communities, to other cultural identities. Prairie View is right outside one of the most metropolitan diverse cities in the United States, Houston. We have such richness in here. During COVID, what we did, instead of taking our students abroad, we started taking local trips that's rooted in global issues in Houston. So international education doesn't just require going beyond your borders. It starts at home too. Like, how can we help grow our students' global mindset on a local level? And the reality is, each student does have a global mindset to a degree. They have rich experiences. Whether they're a rural student, they can talk about that. Rural education, rural life, that's an experience within itself. Where they're an urban student, each student brings a unique perspective that contributes to global learning. And so I definitely feel like they're connected.
This is love, yo. I can talk to you forever. You need to write a book. You already started it?
Thank you. No, I haven't, but I may think about it. I may think about it. I appreciate you.
You need you need to write a book. I mean, everything you're saying, especially this, growing a global mindset at the local level, is something that I think I could definitely translate to the sport context as well. As I continue to, it's wide open, yo. It's wide
Wide
open for the book.
open. Wide
Like
open
you
for
said,
us.
you said it earlier though. International education is so broad. And again, I didn't even know what I didn't know it was a field. And I just thought, oh, study abroad. I don't want to study. I don't want to work and study abroad. I was like, there's internationalization. I'm sorry. It's not. It's like res life. I'll never work in res life.
So
Um, I'm not.
there's some trauma in Red's life. I,
I
I give it to all the Red's life professionals. That's
yo,
what
no
we
lie.
read.
But global education, global learning, international. That's my little area right there.
Yeah.
Um, but Stephanie, segment three, man. Before we bounce, man. How can I and how can our podcast community best support you, right? Both now in this season of preparation and planning and service, but it's of course moving forward as we get closer to and creep closer to January 2024. How can I best support you? How can we best support you?
Thank you. Well, number one, you already are just, having the opportunity to be on your podcast, to be a part of the amazing work that you're doing, and just staying in community. Like, I love the work that you're doing, like the intersection, staying in community, collaboration. I love seeing everyone in international education, but I'm a huge fan of us, we need to be in this field, to advance this field for our students. I'm thankful for what you're doing right now, and excited to see what the future has. I'm ready for Tim Bryson to have his Fulbright. It's coming. It's happening. We manifesting it. We manifesting it. We manifesting it. Like, Ashley helped me. So many other people helped me. I really feel like it's our responsibility to keep the momentum up. And there's the table is big for everybody. Like, it's wide for everybody. There's so much potential, so much opportunity, and we can't do it alone. Like, we truly can't do it alone. Like, this work, as you said, international education, it's a rewarding field, but it requires a lot. It requires work. And one person is not sustainable enough. So what you're doing right now is helpful. And as we continue to grow as professionals, we're in our 30s now. Hopefully next decade continues to treat us well like the 20s did. Then we really gonna be in our bag in our 40s. Like, I'm like, Tim, we made it. We making
Come
it,
on, come on now.
we making it. Okay. Like, just continue to excel and support each other as we, ascend. One thing that I've learned, learned with success, I'm so thankful. My communities is constantly growing. I'm thankful for, the original seeds that have been with me. And I'm thankful for the new seeds that are fertilizing and growing with me, because as you grow, you change, you evolve. And I've learned one of the hardest things about adulthood is sometimes you do outgrow friends, I do grow family, and it's hard, man. That's something we got to talk about, the disconnection sometimes. And
Come on.
it can be lonely, but it's amazing to be connected with like-minded people every day. I'm like filled, like I'm reminded when I'm around with like-minded people, like, I'm affirmed in that, and it's needed. Like, as I grow in a sense, sometimes I feel like I've lost people, not lost, but I've left them behind in a way, in one area. So finding commonality in ways in which we can stay connected, right? But also honoring our pathways as we grow. So for me, just continuing to stay in community as we navigate these academic streets, navigate life, and while also just doing really dope and intentional work.
Oh, you might drop, yo. Write the book, start the pod, do something. We need to hear more Stephanie on the airways or on LinkedIn or on whatever platform you want. We need more of you. And we're not gonna worry about Fulbright until we get to this PhD. Just make sure I finish. Just make sure I finish, yo.
We
I'm
gotta
kind of
talk. We got the conversation after the conversation. We gotta talk, because it's a struggle. I'm right there with you. We don't Sometimes it feels like we're on life support, you know.
oh my
Sometimes,
gosh, this is gonna be the year.
but we
It's
gonna
gonna be the
push
year.
through. Because you're in this. Are you starting dissertation?
Got two classes and take comps next summer, bro.
You getting there. You're moving.
But make sure I finish that. But we're good. We in community. I'm glad that we are still in community. But before we bounce, show, like I said, your work will continue to speak for itself, and we'll continue to amplify it for sure. But who else should we include on this podcast? Because again, we saw you in what, Denver last year, I think, NASPA, Denver,
Oh, that was a minute.
2022. I ain't seen that many black people, which really disheartened me in a number of different ways that I wrote about. But I'll talk to someone else about that on this podcast for sure. But who should we get on this podcast?
Oh
Tilly,
my
someone black and someone international education. If you know a senior internationalization officer who is black or black identifying, we need them ASAP.
Oh, I have a long list. Like, so many names come to my mind, like Keisha Abraham, who has been such a pinnacle, a beacon in this field. She does amazing work. Christina Thompson, she's doing such, like amazing revolutionary work, like especially with her summit. Like so many different names. Lenitra Berger, our girl, who is just doing like transformative work with NASPA, just, being such a symbol of like progress. Raina Montgomery, she's a director at the house. I'm like, come on, girl, come on, doing our things at Morehouse. Andre Stevenson, he's at Elizabeth City State. He's a professor doing good work, does good research. I'm just like, so many names. Tania Hope, leading Howard, doing great work. Yes, like it's just Ashley Brown Greer, two Fulbrights deep. 3-time HBCU graduate, like Corey Saunders. Like there's just so many different people like that's coming to my mind, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. Like it truly takes a communal effort to bring to advance international education, to advance study abroad for our HBCU students, our Black students, students as a whole, to make sure that inclusion is constantly prioritized and at the forefront of study abroad.
One of those names I've definitely been slipping through. I owe Christina Thompson and Corey Saunders a message.
Yeah.
And Dr. Holt, he's Dr.
Marcus King, Marcus King, my former colleague, friend. We just caught up yesterday. Like he's doing good work. Like there's so many, Anthony Pender, Devin Walker, Dr. Devin Walker, like so many like dope people. So many dope people.
Dr. Walker's coming too.
Come on.
So we coming, y'all.
I'm giving him a shout out. He's on my committee.
Dr. Walker, that's the homie, y'all. So his interview had to get rescheduled, but he's gonna be on the podcast very soon. Future Dr. Stephanie, yo. It's been a blessing, yo. Thanks for walking with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if you have time after, I don't want to hold up. We should just like talk in general afterwards. I want to know what's been going on.
Oh, you good? We will most definitely do that. Let me close this out for the people, man. Everyone, man, y'all heard her story. Make sure y'all connect with Stephanie. Definitely LinkedIn. If you somehow stumble upon her Instagram or Twitter, don't shoot your shot because her man is waiting in South Africa.
I cannot with you, Timmy. I cannot.
Hey, we'll see y'all next week. No, play with y'all. We'll see y'all. Do what you do and do what you will. But we'll see y'all next week for another episode of Walk with TFD. I look forward to having more unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. But as always, until then, welcome.